7 p.m. I will now pass you on to our CEO, who will read out the formalities.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome all. This is an ordinary meeting of Council. My name is Alison Beckwith and I'm the Chief Executive Officer. Due to COVID restrictions and current directions from the Chief Health Officer and limits due to COVID-19, we are unable to welcome the public to this meeting tonight. The Council meeting will be live streamed via our website and Facebook page so that you can participate. Temporary amendments have been made to Council's request to speak and public question processes to allow participation without having to attend the meeting in person. Requests to speak tonight are in the format of pre-recorded videos and written statements that will be read out by the executive team on behalf of the residents. Face masks are required to be worn indoors and councillors and officers can remove these when speaking for the live broadcasting purposes. We thank you for tuning in tonight and joining us and for adapting with us during these changing times. We are continuing to monitor announcements and warnings for the health and safety of all in our community. Rules for public participation during the request to speak process are as follows. Please note that any public questions submitted to tonight's Council meeting will be printed and available in the minutes. Council does not accept questions as part of the request to speak process. No statement may be derogatory, defamatory or directed to an individual councillor, member of the staff, ratepayer or member of the public. A 2-minute time limit temporarily applies to all requests to speak. The timer will be used and a warning will sound at the 1.5-minute mark, and officers will then sum up in the last 30 seconds if required for the statements being read out. So I'll now introduce you to those participating in tonight's meeting, and starting from my far right, we have Jeff Glynn, Director of Assets and City Services, Scott Walker, Director of City Development, Councillor Elizabeth Neely, Councillor Alida McKern, Councillor Peter Castaldo, the Mayor, Rick Garotti, Councillor Fiona Mitsinikos, Councillor Tom Malikan, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Alison Champion, Councillor Peter Dimorellis, Director of Community Programs Kath Brackett, and Director of Corporate Services Mark Gilio. To my left is Gina Burden, Manager of Governance and Communication. And also here tonight we have supporting the Council are members of the governance and IT teams and our Jet Studio who are coordinating the live stream this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, CEO. Our meeting is being held on the traditional land of the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung people, and on behalf of the Banyule City Council, I wish to acknowledge them as the traditional custodians. I'd also like to pay my respects to the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung elders, past, present and emerging, and to acknowledge other Aboriginal and Torres Strait elders joining us today. Council is committed to and values diversity within our community. I will now read our diversity statement that demonstrates this commitment. Banyule is a diverse community made up of people from different cultures, beliefs, abilities, bodies, ages, sexualities, genders and identities. Council is committed to inclusion, access and equity for everyone. These principles foster cohesiveness, empower people and improve the well-being of the Banyule community. We now move on to apologies and leave of absence. Councillor Mark Di Pasquale is an apology this evening. Would any other councillor like to advise of any leave of absence? Don't believe so. Next item on the agenda, the confirmation of minutes for the ordinary meetings of Council held on the 21st of September 2020 and the mayoral election held on the the 11th of November 2020. May I have a councillor to move and second? Moved Councillor Malikan and seconded Councillor Champion. And I put the motion. All those in favour? And against? That motion is carried. Disclosure of interests. Are there any disclosures of interests that councillors would like to declare? And we will note there are none. Presentations. There are no scheduled presentations for this evening, and there is no urgent business either. First item of business is item 2.1 under petitions. Airlie construction site situated at the corner of Upper Heidelberg Road and Waverley Avenue, Ivanhoe. We have 3 submitters, all via written statements. The written statements will now be read by Director of Corporate Services Mark Gillio and our Director of Community Programs Kath Brackett.
Thank you, Mayor. The first speaker tonight is Julie Marino, and I speak on behalf of her. And Julie Marino is speaking against the motion tonight. My name is Julie Marino from Ivanhoe. I'm very disappointed that the Airlie NW exclusion zone site entrance has not been closed off to date as residents want. This construction site was supposed to be contained within its boundary and access conducted from the Upper Heidelberg Road frontage and corner. As the residents were not notified that the nature strip and the footpath in front of the Airlie site on Waverley Avenue was to become an exclusion zone and that the street trees would be removed. The builder is using the street even though there is an entire site frontage exclusion zone. My husband had to notify the council that skips were being loaded across the street by the tower crane. We were disappointed that the church hall and church car park are being used by the builder, with forklifts moving skips to the NW site entry from the car park. We have traffic management in the street, traffic banked up, unnecessary noise and disturbance, and this is all disturbing, especially for elderly residents who use Waverley Avenue. Primary school kids also use the street. We regularly have difficulty parking in front of our house, and our driveway is often parked over. The builder has breached many rules in Waverley Avenue over the past months. We would like the builder to use the exclusion zone, not our street. Please close off the NW site entry, which is close to residences and causes great inconvenience. Thank you.
This is a written statement on behalf of Susan Toole. My name is Susan Toole from Ivanhoe. In the Waverley Avenue petition, 38 residents to date have requested the northwest access to the Airlie Waverley Avenue exclusion zone EZ to be solidly enclosed, meaning closed off. Although some significant issues of amenity and safety have been addressed by Council, residents are still concerned that there may be an accident or many occupational health and safety breaches have been observed in the street. The northwest EZ area on Waverley Avenue is a residential interface. It is regularly accessed by an industrial forklift travelling up and down the street between the church car park, mainly carrying skips about. Forklifts are not compatible with pedestrians. Hazardous situations have been observed even with traffic management. Waverley Avenue is a thoroughfare between the Mary Immaculate Primary School and the Ivanhoe shopping strip. Many unaccompanied primary school students and elderly people use Waverley Avenue, which has become an annex of the Airlie construction site. The regular access to this corner on top of the hill by the forklift is a source of nuisance for neighbours and other street users. Airborne dust, soil travelling down the road and extra industrial noise and vibration impact on neighbours' health and wellbeing. Residents have moved away from the street because of ongoing unreasonable nuisance from this site. The area is regularly left open and unattended, close to neighbours' driveways. The street access has become unpredictable due to the forklift. After 2 months, metal gates have been installed to replace temporary fencing at the northwest EZ access area. One side is boarded over, the other is covered with shade cloth. The gates are regularly open to make little difference for neighbours. The Airlie build will be 20 months. Many neighbours live and work at home. Council has a responsibility to preserve and enhance amenity, neighbourhood character, public health and public safety to want a more livable street, to want a safe, more livable street.
The next statement is on behalf of Kevin Biagini, who's speaking against the item tonight. My compliments to the Mayor and Councillors, officers and members of the public. On behalf of myself and fellow members of Bragg, I congratulate the successful candidates of the recent election, welcoming the new arrivals as well as those returning again, those made it back to the fold. This petition is no small matter. 37 signatures says that a significant group of residents have concerns that need to be addressed. This petition is not a bombastic one, not at all. All it sets out is a request to alter the construction management plan and the 4 ways that said plan can be altered. The requests are perfectly reasonable, and it is quite obvious to me that due to consideration and some discussion ensued before the petition was agreed upon amongst those who would represent to Council. This part of Banyule experienced significant change. That was a worrying effect upon local residents. Council needs to show some kindness to residents in this case and future developments. I support this petition, and I say that the residents are in the right to present it to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Giglio. Councillors, there's a recommendation before us on the papers. Can I have a councillor move a motion? Move Councillor McKern. And is there a seconder? Councillor Castaldo. Councillor McKern, would you like to speak on this item?
Yes, I would, Mr Mayor. Thank you. I wish to acknowledge the petition with 37 signatures and 3 written submissions received from Ivanhoe residents in relation to the construction site at 1 Waverley Avenue, Ivanhoe. Thank you to the residents involved for bringing the said issues to Council's attention. When complete, Airlie in Ivanhoe will provide 77 independent retirement living apartments. As such, it represents a significant build. Furthermore, the impacts the build is having on surrounding residents is of significant concern. It is a serious matter, and I have received a number of resident complaints over the past months concerning issues such as reduced amenity, noise and dust, the increase of construction-related machinery in the street and all that that brings, light pollution from the tower crane, and a number of occupational health and safety concerns, a number of which have been raised in the petition and the submissions. It is important that Council responds to resident concerns, follows through and rectifies the issues. While I'm assured by Council staff that the site is constantly monitored, liaison and response needs to be ongoing as required. This is a 20-month build, nearly 2 years long, and it is a very long time to live with the adverse impacts of a large construction site. Per the Governance Officer's recommendations, the petition received has been referred to Council's construction management team. The team is well aware of resident concerns. The team has now responded to the primary petitioner, and I've been given its assurances that it will continue to monitor the site. As Ward Councillor, I'll continue to take a keen interest in matters raised in the received petition, the written statements and other concerns as they may arise. I'm familiar with the site, having now inspected it on a number of occasions. Indeed, I'm happy to meet with residents and the responsible council officers on site to talk through the petition issues, which are clearly articulated in the officer's report and the officer's email response. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Castaldo, would you like to speak? No? Would any other councillors wish to speak? No? Mover, right of reply? No? I now put that motion. All those in favour? And all those against? That motion is carried. Item 5.1, 104 to 106 Watsonia Road, Watsonia, development of 4 dwellings, in brackets P1231/2018. There is one submitter. This written statement will now be read by Director of Assets and City Services, Jeff Glynn.
Thank you, Mayor. This submission is on behalf of John Rayner. Dear councillors, thank you for the opportunity of having our presentation in support of the grant of the permit read out at Council. My wife and I are applicants for this proposal. We appreciate the Council does not want overdevelopment in Watsonia. As residents of Watsonia for more than 60 years and with raising our large family here, neither do we. However, with all the key issues Council officers have flagged as non-compliant with our proposed development at 104 Watsonia Road, they have already passed as compliant to the same or a greater number of developments at 90 Watsonia Road and next door at 108 Watsonia Road. They have already provided permits for these developments which show either the same or greater potential compliance issues. For example, the height of the development, the amount of front yard landscaping and vehicular access have been raised as compliance issues with our development, but Council officers have already provided a permit for a unit development next door at 108 Watsonia Road, which is higher than ours, has a smaller front setback from Watsonia Road and a narrower driveway than our proposed development. This development next door will therefore have a far greater visual impact on the character of the area. Pedestrian access to the unit entrances and backyard space have been raised as issues with our development, but Council officers have already provided a permit for an 8-unit development at 90 Watsonia Road, which is on a smaller parcel of land and has inferior sense of address and pedestrian access and less backyard space. No local residents have opposed our development, unlike the 8-unit development at 90 Watsonia Road. All we and our 4 children are asking for is for Council to adopt a consistent application of their own planning requirements. If the developments at 90 Watsonia Road and 108 Watsonia Road are regarded as being compliant with manual planning requirements, then so should ours be. We ask the Council approve the planning application and issue a planning permit with the appropriate conditions. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Director Glynn. Councillors, there's a recommendation on the papers. Can I have a councillor move a motion? Moved Councillor McKern, and a seconder, Councillor Castaldo. Councillor McKern, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Take this off. I have made inquiries I believe are appropriate to a balanced decision regarding the proposed development at 104 to 106 Watsonia Road, in that I have inspected the subject site and the surrounding area, read the delegates' report and recommendation, studied the proposed development plans and landscape concept, and I have read the neighbourhood character strategy and its objective for the Garden Suburban 1 precinct, which affects the subject site. These are my considerations and comments. I appreciate no public objections have been received. I acknowledge there is a precedent for medium density development in the area and that there are nearby examples of such in Watsonia Road. However, the delegates' report states that this application does not comply on 7 of the Res Code objectives of the Banyule Planning Scheme, including neighbourhood character, open space, landscaping, accessibility, dwelling entry, design detail and site services. The delegates' report also states the proposed development is contrary to siting design and neighbouring residential amenity per the relevant clauses 15.1 and 21.4 of the Banyule Planning Scheme. In addition, the internal referral to traffic objected to the car parking layout, which would need to be corrected to allow vehicles to turn and exit each garage in a forward direction with no more than one correctional movement. The subject site's character is, as previously mentioned, Garden Suburban 1. This is characterised by leafy trees, especially in private setbacks. The subject site is located within a transition zone between leafy residential area and the Watsonia Activity Centre. A comparison has been made by the applicant with a nearby medium density development at 90 Watsonia Road. It should be noted that the said development is located within the Watsonia Shopping Activity Centre, which is affected by different character qualities to the subject site, and so I don't believe the comparison accurately applies. Having studied the landscape concept for the subject site, which was provided to councillors for consideration on the 21st of November, I don't believe the application provides sufficient opportunity to soften building bulk and hard surface treatments, nor do I believe, when mature, the proposed landscape design will adequately integrate the development into its surrounding garden suburban neighbourhood. This is particularly the case for the side and rear setbacks of the proposed development. I note that the landscape concept borrows space from neighbouring property for tree establishment in the setback on the northern boundary. I believe the borrow, while permitted by Council's tree planting zones guidelines, is excessive.
Can you sum up, Councillor McKern? You've run out of time. Yeah.
Rats. Didn't get to say my conclusion. Sorry, Mr Mayor.
Second, Councillor Cristaldo, would you like to speak?
Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge some of the challenging experiences of the applicant on this matter tonight, but we're not being asked to agree or disagree with the planning permit refusal and deal with the planning matter on those grounds only. Neighbourhood character and enhancement of that is fundamental to my approach when I assess any planning application, whether it be in my ward or not. In this case, it is not. In this instance, the proposed development is located in a transition area between a surrounding neighbourhood character away from the activity centre, but close to still in Watsonia. In reviewing the submitted plans and following emails from the applicant, I agree with the delegates' report and will only raise a few reasons that I agree with that tonight. It will not make a positive contribution to neighbourhood character and the area and does not provide for an acceptable living standard. No objections does not constitute a reason for me to not refuse this. And there is minimal opportunities for garden planting, and given the location, I believe that's very important when I'm considering this as well. And for those reasons, I do not see any reason for overturning the position taken by officers this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Castaldo. Are there any other councillors who would wish to speak on this item? I may take the opportunity briefly to note that I had a few discussions, very positive discussions with the applicant, Mr. John Rayner. I found John to be very respectful, very dignified, very thoughtful in his approach to council, and certainly myself as a councillor. I'd like to acknowledge and appreciate that from Mr. Rayner. Thank you very much for the way that you've conducted yourself in a very dignified way through the process. I'd also like to note to you that the feedback that was passed on to me was also relayed to the councillor group ahead of the meeting this evening, so that the councillor group could make a decision with the full information that was available. Our mover, would you like a right of reply? Okay.
Given that the subject site is in a transition zone and in keeping with that garden suburban character, it would be appropriate that any amendment or reapplication actually considered the neighbourhood character qualities more significantly, and as a result, I do propose that the delegates' recommendation to refuse the proposal in its current form is upheld.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll now put this in motion. All those in favour, raise your hands. And all those against, raise your hands. I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 5.2 regarding the proposed sale of council land at the rear of 7A Curzon Street, Ivanhoe, public submissions. There are two Section 223 submissions. These submissions follow a statutory process under the Local Government Act and have 5 minutes to address the council. The written submissions will now be read by Director of Assets and City Services, Jeff Glynn, followed by the Director of Community Programs, Kath Brackett.
Thank you, Mayor. The first submission is from Emma Samuel. I would like to object to the sale of this land on the grounds that the Council has not provided sufficient evidence to justify the sale. In the body of this submission, I lay out a number of key questions which seek to address gaps in the information provided by Council on the sale of the land. The overview. The Council has provided insufficient information as to how the 38 square metre parcel of land was created and then licensed. Further, based on the evidence provided, it is not clear that the 38 square metre parcel was created legally. Point 2, as contained on Certificate of Title Volume 11466, Folio 105, this council land forms a part of the Darebin Creek Reserve and as such analogous properties in 30789 or 3079. As such, a sale of this price will be an act by the council to create a market distorting mechanism in property prices in 3079. In the discussion, point 1, the 38 square metre parcel of land. Point 1, backfilling of the land. Part A, it is stated in the public notice the following: the development of a property at 7A Curzon Street, Ivanhoe, henceforward referred to as the property, part of the council land forming part of the Darebin Creek Reserve was backfilled. Point B, why was this land backfilled? Point C, who completed this backfill so as to create the usable 38 square metre parcel of land? Point D, was this done legally? Point E, what documentation can council provide as evidence that proper process was followed to change the council land? Point F, in the instance that this land was backfilled illegally, what action did the council take against the perpetrator? Point G, if no action was taken, why was this? Part 2, the licence to use the land. Part A, in 2016, the owners of the property were granted a licence at a cost of $500 a year. The reason given for the licence in the notice for sale is because of its location and steep topography. It was considered impractical for council to safely access and maintain the subject land. If this was the case, why in 2016 had the land suddenly become impracticable for the council to maintain? Point B, was it impractical to maintain when the land was just an embankment prior to being backfilled or backfilling? Point C, if it was able to be maintained up until the time at which it was backfilled, why was the embankment backfilled in the first place? Point D, what consultation was provided to the public and neighbouring properties that a licence was to be granted? Can the council provide documentation of this? Point E, was the Darebin Parklands Association consulted about the licence? Point F, what costing was used to determine a $500 a year for a 38 square metre in 3079? Can council provide documentation on this? Point G, was this rate reassessed at regular intervals with a reference to changes in the rental and property market? Can the council provide documentation on this? Part 2, considerations in selling 38 square metres of land forming part of the Darebin Creek Reserve. What data and reasonability tests were used to determine that if this portion of the Darebin Creek Reserve is surplus to council requirements as per the notice of sale? Was the Darebin Parklands, point 2, was the Darebin Parklands Association consulted on? Part A, the consideration of this land might be surplus to council requirements, and B, the sale of the land. If so, what was the association's response? Part 3, was there a wildlife impact risk assessment completed? If so, what were the results? Part 4, on the facts, it would appear that the sale of this land benefits the owners of the property and not any other residents. Given this, what consideration has been given to Section 189 of the Local Government Act 1989 and the Local Government Guideline on the Sale, Exchange and Transfer of Land 2009? The guidelines state that the sales, exchange and transfers of land should be in the best interest of the community and provide the best result, both financially and non-financially, for the council and the community. On the balance of probabilities, what data was used to determine that this land sale was in the best interest of the community? What assessment was made to ensure that the Section 173 restrictions on the use of the property are sufficient protections for the land? Can these protections be overturned by VCAT ruling? If so, what would be the consequences?
Director Glynn, the time has expired. Director Brackett, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm reading this submission on behalf of Roxanne Lay and Eddie Zupan. Our names are Roxanne Lay and Eddie Zupan. Last year, we were the sole objectors to the proposed rezoning of the land to the rear of 7A Curzon Street, Ivanhoe, from Public Conservation and Resource Zone to Neighbourhood Residential Zone 3. This proposal also involves removing the restrictive covenant and the reserve status of the land. We are writing this submission to confirm that our objection stands, and we will not be withdrawing it. Last year, we had numerous meetings with council officers who believed that it was in our best interest to accept a sale with conditions attached via a Section 173 agreement. And in an effort to protect our amenity and privacy, we engaged a planning consultant to draw up a development restriction plan as well as a draft Section 173 agreement. Upon consideration, we have come to the realisation that we cannot trust the owners of 7A Curzon Street, Ivanhoe, to abide by any such agreement. We strongly believe that they will attempt to overturn or amend the Section 173 agreement through VCAT, and our interests will not be protected after all. The owners of 7A Curzon Street, Ivanhoe, are not interested in obtaining the subject land to extend and beautify their garden. They have had that opportunity since licensing the land in 2016 and have not maintained it nor planted anything on it. In 2015, they had intended to, in brackets illegally, build a large intrusive deck over the reserve land. We still believe that is their intention. The restricted covenant placed on the Darebin Parklands Reserve is to protect the land exactly from this situation, being sold to greedy private property owners. The boundary of 7A Curzon Street, Ivanhoe was determined by Banyule Council less than 10 years ago, and so the owners built their house accordingly. Their wish to extend their land holding is driven purely by avarice. We are appalled that council members agreed to sell the subject land for the paltry sum of $11,000, including GST, down from the original quote of $38,000, excluding GST. Even senior property officers at Banyule Council deemed $11,000 was not a fair and reasonable price and recommended that the sale of the land proposal be abandoned. We can imagine that other landowners with properties that back onto the Darebin Parklands could then also expect to extend their rear boundaries by a few metres at bargain basement prices. Selling such prime land at all, but especially for a price well below market value, sets a dangerous precedent. We would like to pose the question to Council: how is it that this 38 metre square parcel of land was valued at $38,000, i.e. $1,000 per metre squared? Our land adjacent to 7A was valued at over 1,500 metres squared, according to our 2019-2020 rates notice. Surely then a more accurate valuation of the land would be $57,000 and not $38,000. Banyule Council seems to have a history of being very financially accommodating to the owners of 7A Curzon Street, Ivanhoe. Firstly, by charging them only $30,000 for their original parcel of 364 metres squared in 2012 as part of a land swap deal. This land would not have been worth at least 10 times as much. Secondly, in 2016, by coming down from an original quoted licence fee of $14,000 a year to $500 a year, and lately by allowing them to default on payments of their licence fee since June 2019. Agreeing to sell the subject land now for $11,000, including GST, puts the price of $290 per metre squared on it. 290 metres squared, on it, which is approximately 1/5 the value of our land. Another very favourable outcome for the owners of 7A Curzon Street, Ivanhoe. Another issue that we believe has not been addressed satisfactorily by Council is that the subject land was created by illegally backfilling in 2014. Banyule Council's Planning Investigations Officer was aware of this and no action was taken against the owners of 7A Curzon Street, Ivanhoe. No rectification works were ordered. Instead, the matter was referred to Melbourne Water, who did nothing. The fact that Council now intends to profit from this earlier inaction is reprehensible. We would like Banyule Council to abandon this land sale proposal altogether. If Council persists with it, we will be engaging legal representation to explore all avenues to prevent any such land sale from occurring.
Thank you, Director Brackett. Councillors, there is a recommendation on our papers. Can I have a councillor please move a motion? Councillor McKern, and do we have a seconder? Councillor Castaldo. Councillor McKern, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wish to acknowledge the 9 public submissions received in relation to the proposed sale of land at 7A Curzon Street in Ivanhoe. Thank you to those involved for putting forward your points of view. While I accept that serious questions have been raised in the submissions, it should be understood that the purpose of tonight's report is to receive and hear the submissions received in relation to the proposed sale of the subject land abutting the rear of 7A Curzon Street in Ivanhoe. It is not the aim of tonight's meeting to make a decision regarding the sale of the subject land. What's important tonight is to hear and consider all the submissions. Going on from tonight, after considering the submissions, a further report will be prepared by the officers stating their recommendations. This will be presented at the next council meeting on 14th of December and a decision will be made at that time. Once again, I thank the submitters for their time and effort. It is a sign of the healthy interest our residents take in the management of Banyule's beautiful parks and waterways.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Castaldo, would you like to speak? Would any other councillor like to speak to this item? Mover, write a reply. I now put this in motion. All those in favour? And all those against? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 7.1, record of councillor meetings. There is one submitted, Mr. Kevan Hill, and a pre-recorded video will now play.
Public question. The previous council advised that Labor Cabinet. I speak on behalf of Bragg in relation to the Ivanhoe Library and Cultural Hub. I request a copy of the minutes of the 4th August meeting. Bragg has never been opposed to the Ivanhoe Library project per se, but justifiably concerned about the significant cost blowout occurring. In response to my August 20 public question, the previous council advised that Labor capitalisation on the project is $444,000. Bragg posits that Labor capitalisation will approximate $1.2 million calculated from data contained in current council financial reports. When earlier probed by Bragg, the previous council provided different figures for the project budget on 2 different occasions. First stating the budget contract was $29.34 million and subsequently just before the recent council election stating that the budget was $34.5 million, that this was the Buxton contract price and that the project was on budget. Bragg understands that Buxton negotiated contract variation around the time the budget was stated to be $29.34 million. The obvious question for ratepayers is whether the variance of $5.16 million between the two proclaimed budget costs is the quantum of the contract variation. If not, then what is the quantum of the initial contract variation? Bragg further understands that Buxton has recently requested a second contract variation to recover unexpected costs associated with COVID-19 workplace restrictions. If the cost of either or both contract variation claims is yet to be added to the twice stated but different project budgets, then ipso facto either budget is exceeded because they are claimed to be the contract price. Consider the ridiculously expensive circa $400,000 thematic light fitting in the library foyer. The cost of the formed aluminium is about $120,000, the balance cost $280,000 being necessary supporting structural, steelwork and installation costs. New councillors especially might consider it prudent to demand an independent external audit of the new Ivanhoe Library and Cultural Hub.
Councillor, there is a recommendation on the papers. Can I have a councillor move a motion? Moved Councillor Champion. And is there a seconder who would like to second? Councillor Mitsinokos. Councillor Champion, would you like to speak to this item? No? Councillor Mitsinokos, would you like to speak to the item? And is there any other councillor who wishes to speak? In that case, I now put the motion. All those in favour and all those against? I declare the motion carried. Item 7.2, Annual Report for the 2019-2020 financial year. There is one submitted, Mr. Kev Arnhill, and a pre-recorded video will now play.
Investments, A, unlisted share. I speak on behalf of Bragg. There are many aspects of the annual report with which Bragg has no issue. In the past 4 annual reports and budgets, Bragg has drawn Council's attention to the escalating employee expenses and employment budgets, where about 100 extra EFT have been added to the budget with no increase in operational efficiency discernible to the public. Council has underspent its employee budgets by between $2 to $3 million annually for the past 4 years, indicating that Council is probably over budgeting employee costs and thus inflating its budget. Against these inflated budgets, Council has increased its tax impost on ratepayers by increasing rates. Bragg believes that the previous Council's recent past big spending and its business as usual election budget 21-22 have significantly reduced the financial flexibility available to the new Council. Worryingly, total discretionary reserves have reduced circa $20 million from 55.297 June 30, 2019 to 35.623 million 30 June 2020. I refer to item 6.3 investments, A, unlisted shares on page 47. Bragg notes the significant $300,000 decrease in fair value recognised in the net result. Bragg raised concerns about this investment at the ordinary meeting of Council on the 15th of June 2020. At the time, Council provided a deflective response devoid of the quantitative information sought by Bragg. Bragg trusts that the new enlarged Council with 4 fresh councillors will be motivated to be less adversarial and to engage with the community.
For acknowledging the very short notice, the turnaround in certainly this year's budget and therefore this report due to the COVID-19 financial impacts that were going to be placed on our residents. Council normally goes ahead and votes on the budget in around April. Our officers created a budget for that time. We were ready to go ahead in April and vote on that, and COVID-19 impacted us by the end of March, and Council was in a position where it needed to change or make a different decision, which it did, and our officers stepped up. I would like to thank them for investing their personal time, a lot of their personal time, to completely rebuild our budget and this report, to allow for the support that we have invested and given to our community, whether they are residents or they are business owners, or landlords, So, yeah, just simply thank you. Thank you to the officers for their investment of their own time and their families' time in this actual activity. And hopefully we don't have to do this again at all, ever.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Councillor Malikan, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. I will make a few comments. It has been a very difficult year, and I think this annual report reflects that. But I'd also like to congratulate our new CEO on a magnificent job for the year. Through the COVID-19, we've been under enormous pressure, and her response has been magnificent. Has managed the budget well, but she's managed the staff extremely well, and she's maintained the morale, she's maintained the confidence, and she's maintained the spirit of the council through a very difficult time, and I'd like to thank her for those efforts. And the election process is also quite difficult, but I think the council's handled that quite well. It can be quite robust and can be quite demanding, the election process, and I think they've done an excellent job there well. But I totally reject the assertion in the submission that it was a business as usual election budget. I think this budget, we worked on it very hard. We changed it a lot, and I too would like to thank the officers, because I remember sitting down in February and we basically discussed the budget back then and agreed upon an outcome, and that was changed totally in April and then again in June. And then when we finally adopted the budget in late September, it was a completely different document, and I think it responded very well to the crisis we're all facing at that time. I think it supported our community groups, it supported our businesses, it supported our staff, and I think it was the best budget of any council in response to the COVID crisis. So I'd actually take a particular exception to that. And also the comments about us being not transparent, not open. I think we are the most open and transparent council in Melbourne, and there's not many places where residents, or councils where residents can put submissions. It's not ideal at the moment, but I've been to other councils and public making submissions on items is just not allowed. So I think this council is doing an excellent job under the leadership of our CEO, and I'd like to thank her for everything. But I think in a very difficult year, this council has done extremely well.
Thank you, Councillor Malikan. Would any other councillor wish to speak? I'll just note that the item tonight is to note the annual report, and the previous council in fact adopted the financial statements, the statutory reports and the report of operations. So this was purely for noting for a new council, and many comments were made at the previous council meeting where this was adopted. And the one comment that I will reiterate is that previously this council was in debt and deficit. I'm very pleased that for many, many years now this council has been delivering surpluses and has been paying down debt. And I have no doubt that that is my commitment and the commitment of this council to continue to run a good, solid ship. Thank you. I would now like to put our mover, would you like a right to reply? No? I now put the motion. All those in favour? And all those against? I declare the motion carried. Item 7.3, Audit and Risk Committee minutes for the meeting that occurred on the 18th of September 2020. There's a motion, there is a recommendation in our papers. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Moved Councillor Tom Malikan and seconded Councillor Peter De Morales. Councillor Tom Malikan, would you like to speak to the item?
Just say a quick word, yes, thanks to staff again on that. As I said earlier, it's been a very difficult year, and I think the Audit Committee has done an extremely good job. It's always interesting going to the Audit Committee. They bring a different perspective to life, I think, but they fulfil a very important role and certainly keep the ship steady and make many good recommendations. And the Audit Committee has been ably led by our new Mayor, Councillor Garotti, and I think he's done an excellent job, and we're very lucky to have his expertise on that committee, but also the independent people on that committee do a great job. And the reaction between Vargo our staff, the independent people on that committee, they work very well together. They question each other to the degree where they all need to perform at their absolute best, and I think that's the exact purpose of a audit committee. It's not to throw rocks at each other and bicker, but to try and get to the absolute peak of performance for the organisation from a financial perspective and from a risk perspective. And I think we have an excellent committee that achieves all those outcomes, and I think they're a credit and what makes this such a good council. So I'd like to thank the staff and particularly Councillor Garotti for his efforts, and unfortunately I won't be able to continue on this committee, but we have some excellent councillors who are very keen to take on these roles, and I'm very happy to pass on to some of my newer councillors those opportunities and look forward to their input into those committees.
Thank you, Councillor Malikan. Councillor De Morales, would you like to speak? No? Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? No? Councillor Malikan, right to reply? No? I now put the motion. All those in favour? And all those against? I declare the motion carried. Item 8 on the agenda for this evening, general business. And I understand that Councillor Alison Champion has an item of general business she would like to raise.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, we would like to acknowledge our Chief Executive Officer, Alison Beckwith's first year of service as the head of Banyule City Council. Now, her official start date isn't for another month. However, the councillor group of November 2019 does remember participating in the lengthy and very challenging selection process which ended around this time last year. So in her first year as leader of approximately 1,000 staff, she has overseen and successfully achieved the following: the relocation of over 300 office-based staff to work from home within days of the state government's advice of such at the commencement of lockdown in March. Seamless transition of online council meetings to ensure Banyule City Council meetings presented professionally and ran smoothly, gaining positive comments from other councils. Weekly video updates to staff to ensure they were kept well informed and ensured the councillors were all engaged and informed every step of the way during lockdown periods. Promotion of mindfulness and wellbeing to staff while working from home. Delivery of the implementation of Council's COVID-19 economic support package, community and business support package, Rediscover Local campaign. So Alison's first year as the CEO also fell during a council election year in which Banyule transformed from 7 wards to 9, consequently an increased councillor group and the first time Banyule has held 9 councillors. Alison has managed the process very effectively during the election period, ensuring there has been a smooth transition and has created a welcoming environment for the newly elected council. We look forward to many more years of her sound leadership, and hopefully they will be easier than the first.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Are there any other items of general business this evening? No? Well, in that case, I'd like to note that the next ordinary meeting of Council will be held on Monday, the 14th of December 2020. And I'll now also close the meeting formally at 7:55 p.m. and thank all those in attendance from home via the video stream. Thank you all.